on the call.
So Sailaja has joined us. Hi, Sailaja.
Hi.
Hi, Sailaja.
Hello.
Happy afternoon, Pushpa here.
Yes, same to you.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Super.
So we have with us Nandini Sarkar, who is the chairwoman for the year.
Okay.
And yeah, and she's
so happy. We are so happy to welcome you today, Sailaja, and so keen on listening and learning from you.
Hi, Nandini.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's Sujata. She will be helping us out with the questions. She will be curating through the chat box.
Okay.
We were thinking we'll ask you the questions towards the end.
Yes.
Would that work? Or in case you want to take on one or in the middle, we can do that.
No, it's fine to take it at the end, and perhaps we can tell people to keep their questions also for the end. Just allows us to manage time a little better, I think.
Yeah.
And are we staying with the idea of the breakouts as you and I had discussed, Anu, which is you and Sujata stay on in the main room?
Yeah, we'll do that. I think Pushpa is the key host, so I think she'll have to stay on. Yeah. And then Sujata, depending on the number of people, Sujata can either stay in the main or can join one of the breakout rooms.
So I'm just going to leave that to you. You can orchestrate it back end through whatever you have to do. Yeah. Okay, lovely. And I'll just be on standby till you invite me in to speak. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Sure. So I think we are right on time and on the dot. I think Nandini, over to you. And we are already live streaming this.
Oh, okay.
We're good to go.
Sure.
All the best.
Thank you. Hello and a warm welcome to everyone for joining us in today's webinar. To understand your emotional triggers, hosted by CII Indian Women Network, in short, IWIN, Karnataka chapter. A brief about IWIN, Indian Women Network under the aegis of Confederation of Indian Industries, was set up in the year 2013 to nurture, develop, and enable networking opportunities for women professionals across industry spectrum and entrepreneurship. We have our footprints across the country. At IWIN Karnataka, we keep membership engagement at the core of everything we do as we enable platform to engage, empower, and enrich. We are on a continual improvement journey, empowering individuals, transforming organizations, impacting society, building community, and developing self with a common purpose of impacting lives, livelihood, and growth through our SDG partnerships, primarily 3, 5, and 8. We took the first leap to promoting the cause of marginalized groups towards mainstreaming and raising the bar of awareness around LGBTQ+ community, and have touched almost close to 77+ corporates in a strategic partnership with Solidarity Foundation. Also to highlight here, we recently graduated our first cohort of Eve Empower, a leadership mentoring program for senior women professionals with almost 14 pairs to say, and it was a cross-industry, cross-gender association. We recently announced our cohort 2 with 25 pairs, a 50% plus growth that we saw. We have successfully graduated our cohort 1 of peer-to-peer coaching program for mid to senior career women. And there was about close to 12 participants in cohort 1. And as we look at announcing our cohort 2, shortly with 50% plus growth as we envisage. We have hosted 3-part masterclasses on managing finance, happiness, and communication, and didn't miss sight of the need around startups and hosted a masterclass series. We are continually hosting expert-led panels every month on topics like education redesigned, menstrual hygiene, how to remain fit with easy exercises. Our efforts have touched almost close to 2,800 plus lives since April this year. We have started hosting virtual job fairs in a strategic partnership with Jivitam, a tech-enabled platform targeted to impact women with diverse skill sets with or no access to computers or smartphones, catering to blue and white collar jobs. Our 3 job fairs so far have seen almost close to 17,000 plus registrations, 5,000 plus applications, and 2,000 plus shortlisting of candidates. We operate through 5 strategic pillars, namely leadership, gender parity, membership enhancement, impact and outreach, and health and well-being. Today's webinar is presented by the health and wellness pillar. Here I recall what Lao Tzu says: watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. We become more resilient as we encounter and master the situations around us. It's all in noticing the moments, labeling these emotions, and managing them to respond constructively. Whenever we have doubts, and we will, it's critical to remember that we have everything in us. We need to take care of our emotional well-being in order to bounce back. Emotional well-being is an important part of holistic wellness as it heavily impacts our outlook in life, our relationships, and our health. I'm looking forward to this learning moment together in this webinar and wishing you all a healthy emotional well-being. And with this, let me call upon our dynamic leader and achiever, our very own, the convener of the Health and Wellness Pillar, Pushpalata. The floor is all yours, Pushpa.
Thank you, Nandini. Hi, happy afternoon, everyone. Trust all of you are safe and healthy. And those who are celebrating, not celebrating, happy Varmalakshmi festival. Today it's festival here in South Karnataka and Karnataka. So I'm Pushpalata, convener of Health and Wellbeing Pillar of CII-IWN. I'm co-founder and director of Garbhagudi Group of Companies, founder and CEO of Strategist, empowering healthcare entrepreneurs to build enduring, sustainable healthcare enterprises. This year, with Health and Wellbeing Pillar, we have taken an approach and a roadmap that we will address all the 5 layers of holistic health. Why we call it holistic? I'm sure all of you know that it is not only about the physical fitness or the spiritual angle, right? It is that we getting anchored on all the layers of the health, that is physical, emotional, mental, intellectual, and spiritual. So one of the layer of today's focus is emotional layer. It's my privilege to welcome you all to today's session on one of the most important topic, especially during COVID times and post-COVID. Today's topic is understand your emotional triggers. I leave Anu Seth, who is the expert, and Sailaja to speak on this topic and give a detailed description about the session and what is this understanding our emotional trigger all about. But definitely it's a honor to have esteemed speaker, today's speaker, Sailaja Manacha. My hearty welcome, Sailaja. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and be here today. It's truly an honor to have you as our guest speaker today. And we have our chairwoman, Nandini Sarkar, who introduced already here, co-chair Anupama, and my own IWN CII Health and Wellbeing Pillar members, Sujata and Anu and Julian, all our support structure. Welcome you all. It's a great team together here conducting this session today. And it's my honor to welcome Dr. Asha Sujai, the founder and medical director, Garbhagudi Group of Companies, who is also there in the session today. Thanks, Dr. Asha, for joining for this session. I know how busy your schedule is. Thanks for joining. So it truly means a lot for us. Hearty welcome, my dear participants. So definitely it is together we all can understand and then see what best we can do to understand our own emotional triggers. Let me begin this session with a quick introduction about Anu. So Anu is our health and well-being most dynamic leader. So she is the co-founder of Paid Forward. She's an expert with financial wellness. Over to you, Anu, for today's session. So I would request you to give a quick intro about yourself, and then please take over the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pushpa. Thank you, Nandini, for a wonderful context setting on why we need this session on emotional well-being and how it's so important. A little bit about me. I head a group called Paid Forward. We launched this as a financial wellness initiative, but I've been involved in all aspects of wellness because I feel that it's a very holistic thing. And as part of the health and well-being pillar, I have the privilege to introduce the speaker today. We have with us Sailaja Manacha. Sai, as those of us who know her, she's a psychotherapist and a transformational coach. She's coaching some of the well-established industry leaders in IT and healthcare industries, along with many other industries. She's based in Bangalore. Sailaja's focus area is women and leadership, and she runs programs for women-only transformational groups. And she runs workshops with a focus on building their capacity and presence. This is something we all need quite, it's a very pertinent need right now. She blends leadership training along with coaching and somatic work in order to facilitate a sustainable behavior change. And this is something I relate with very personally, because no matter how much we try to bring in change without a significant understanding from an emotional well-being, none of these changes are going to be sustainable. She is also the author of the Amazon best-selling book launched in November 19. It's called Step Up. Step Up is also one of our most sought after programs. It's India's first 100% online women leadership program. So those of you here who may be interested in this, please reach out to Sailaja. By qualification, she is a professional certified coach with the International Coach Federation. Sai is also involved in continued advanced coach development with the Institute of Generative Leadership in the USA. Now, as you all know, our subconscious mind has a large contribution towards who we are and how we behave and what really triggers us. So Sailaja, her style of coaching involves not just leadership, she also uses personal transformation and has been doing this for the last 20 years. She combines several approaches like transaction analysis, systemic constellation, psychodynamics, and ontology. Now, ontology was a very interesting term. It actually means the study of a being. So all you guys listening to us here and girls, so get curious just to deep dive into who you are and to understand a little bit better about who it is. So let me just give you an example on, perhaps take a deep breath, imagine yourself in an office setup. And imagine that someone has just come and taken a pen without asking you. I'm really simplifying the situation. A simple incident like this can spark an intense emotional reaction, regardless of what your current mood was. Is there a correlation? What should be the right expression? How does one deal with it? Who better than Sailaja to walk us through emotional triggers and help us understand them better? Over to you, Sailaja. We are all curiously waiting to get on this learning journey with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you've shared. I'm just going to share my screen in a while. But what I want to say is really that we will start off with understanding some ideas around emotional triggers. And sometime towards the close of what I want to present, I will put you into breakout groups. So you will see an invitation, because Anu and I talked about this and we said it's good to not just have a content download. It's a very good idea to have some reflection and bring all that content close to us, right? With beginning to think about ourselves in connection with that concept. So we'll have a small little breakout session. And then, of course, at the end, we will have time for Q&A. So that's pretty much going to be the flow. Let me just share my screen. Just give me a moment.
Just a couple of hygiene parameters, if I can just repeat once again. Kindly keep your phones on mute, and keep yourselves also on mute. And in case you want to share something, you can either raise your hand. You can also continuously share your questions on the chat box. We will be curating these questions, and Sailaja will address them towards the end of the session.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, I think it has really been my privilege to be able to be in transformative journeys of so many leaders for the last 15 years as a coach and also as a therapist and a psychologist. They go hand in hand for me. And so I find it has been really interesting to walk some of these growth journeys with leaders, but also with regular individuals who are really wanting to realize their potential. So without further ado, let's go straight into understanding emotional triggers. So when we think of whether we are a team member or whether we're a leader, when you think of either of these profiles, we know the significance of relational intelligence, and the value of how we manage our relationships at work. We also know the significance of conversational intelligence. How is it that we carry out our work? How is it that we arrive at a focused outcome of what we want? We do all of that conversationally. And as leaders and team members, we're constantly involved in problem solving. So when you look at these three, what is really the common piece between these three skills above? Relational intelligence, conversational intelligence, and problem solving. The common thing in all of this is actually emotions. Emotions are connected with each of these three skills that you can see on the screen. A lot of people tend to think that problem solving is about the mind. It's about how well we think. So let me tell you that emotions are 50% of problem solving, and the mind and thinking is another 50% of it. So problem solving is very much a function of thinking as well as feeling. And therefore, emotions and how we manage it fits into how we relate to others, how we converse with others, and also how we problem solve. So let me go straight now into this picture. It's a curious one. And the statement that goes with it is that we have all been shaped. So inside each of us, adults, is a little self. A little self that could be, multiple ages, different little selves, but there is a little self. And this adult that we are has been shaped by the myriad of experiences that we've had growing up, family of origin, in our culture, in our social connected community that we grow up in. There are immense influences, right? And within these influences are also the influence on how our emotional patterns are shaped, how our thinking patterns are shaped, and how our relational patterns, how are we with other people, all of those are shaped by the different experiences that we are exposed to year after year after year, especially in our developmental years when we are younger, right? And therefore, so there was a very wonderful line which I've heard, and I don't remember whose it is, but I just love it. And so it's right here, which is, history is the sculptor of our being. What is this history? It's our personal history. Our personal history of relationships, our personal histories of joys, of times when we have been impacted in our lives. There's lots of personal history each of us bring. And what a lot of us don't realize is that personal history, in times of non-COVID, they walked in and out of our offices with us every day. Now in COVID times, we're not necessarily going in and out of our offices, but we sit with our personal history in every moment of our day. And we are listening and responding and being with others in connection with this personal history. So now what I want to do is, I want to tell you a story. Listen keenly and begin to see what around emotions are you understanding from the story? And I will ask you for a response at the end of this over chat. So the story is of a guy who, went into work. He worked in the IT field and went into work like a regular day, sat at his cubicle, started his work. And then somewhere around, midday, he is called in by his leader and told that it's not just you, but several people in our business are being let go. Yeah, it is unfortunate. I feel bad about it. And yet this is my job. So starting from the next 1 hour, your services with us are done. And of course, we will compensate and, give you a good severance and all of it. But you're being asked to give in your ID and to leave. And again, it's not just you, it's several people. So you can imagine, that this person for some time, he was stunned. He went back to his cubicle in that stunned, manner. And as he looked around, he could see some others also who were, had boxes and were beginning to clear their desk and put stuff in. And so he did the same and, finished his formalities, left the building and went home. And as he was driving home and he arrived home, he could really sense that his mood and how he was feeling in his mind and his body, all of it had shifted in that, 30-minute drive home. And when he reached home, he didn't say anything to anybody, but he was grumpy, he was irritable, he was upset. And anything that anyone asked him, he was snapping, at the smallest thing that was possible, even though they attempted to, talk to him, see what's wrong, connect with him, ask him about it. He ended up having an argument, fighting with people. If, even food was offered to him, that became a problem. He was blaming. So you can imagine that from afternoon to night, in this person's house, all he did was be irritable, upset, snappy, grumpy, not giving too many reasons for what's going on with him, not speaking too much, but just so unpleasant. And at the end of that evening, he just got fed up of being home. He decided to go out. He said, at least I'll go and meet a friend. And luckily for him, he met a good friend who said, come on, let's have a cup of chai together. So he sat down and finally he found himself telling his friend what happened in the day. This friend was a good friend, spent, a good 2 hours chatting with him. And at the end of that evening, our man felt so much more relaxed, felt so much more like his head was, in the right place, on his shoulders. Earlier, he really was feeling frazzled and he decided to go home. When he went home, finally, late in the night, he decided to speak to his family. And then he shared what had happened. And luckily, his family was a very, very warm and supportive family. So, 2 or 3 of them rallied around him, sat, spoke a lot, well into the night to begin to see what was going on for him and what is it that they could do, as a family to cope. Because he and they were all aware of his liabilities, the different commitments that he had, financial commitments, which were big. And so they sat for hours together, well into the night, talking about how were they going to manage as a family. And, that in the early morning hours, they were all exhausted. And of course, they could retire for the day. So this is a story which may not seem unfamiliar to many of us. We may all know so many people who've been through similar situations. So here comes my question. What did you understand about the emotional flow of the story? What do you think this person was actually experiencing? What was being expressed? What was happening inside of him? I'd love for you to put it into the chat so that I can begin to see what are you gathering from this. What are you hearing about the emotional aspects of the story of this man? What happened? Let's make this a little interactive so that we can stay engaged. Okay, thank you, Sujata. You're saying insecurity. Why me? Pushpa, you're saying hurt in the beginning. Okay. Any other responses? He was going through many emotions, and when he was asked to leave the job, and he felt let down. Okay. Insecurity, fear, helplessness. Thank you, Anu. Shock and anger. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Thank you for your responses. That helps me to see how you've engaged with the story. So you see, when this happened to him, all he did was go back home, like you notice in the story, and be irritable, upset, angry, arguing, fighting with people at home. That's what he did. It was very different towards the end of his day and where he had arrived, right, in terms of beginning to see and understand his helplessness and his difficulty. Yeah, and probably it was so scary, right, for him. All of this happening. So it's interesting to see what was expressed, at different times, towards the start of the event, towards the middle of the event, and towards the end of his day. Yeah. And so we are here talking now about 4 base emotions. And today what I'm borrowing from, whether it's the emotions idea or 2 other concepts that I want to cover, are all from the world of transactional analysis, which is a very, very powerful framework to understand personality and human behavior. So in TA, we say that there are 4 base emotions, and each of these emotions actually has a function. They've been given to us for a reason. Yeah, they all have a purpose in our lives. So the first thing is to begin to understand that, yeah, emotions are useful. They are a feedback mechanism. They have a purpose. They have a function for us as human beings. And the 4 base emotions are anger, sadness, joy, and fear. And whatever we experience otherwise, yeah, are a permutation and combination of these 4 main buckets of emotions. Yeah, and an easy way to remember this is to just think of it as mad, sad, glad, and fear. It's a simple way to remember these 4 emotions. So when you think of anger, anger is really about getting what you want, right? So it's about if somebody is, stamping over your foot, when you're in a queue, then we get upset if they're jostling with us, and that upset allows us to tell them to get off our foot and stand properly. Yeah, anger also serves a protective function, because if somebody is being unjust, then we are angry, and that unjustness and anger that we experience allows us to stand up for what we want and ask for what we want. Yeah. So the purpose and function of anger is allowing us, to protect ourselves, and also allowing us to draw boundaries and ask for what we want. So that's the key function of anger. The second, sadness. The function of sadness is really for us to know that we have lost something, right, in the now. Yeah, and to recognize that loss. For example, over April, May, when we had the second wave hit, and so many of us may have known people who've lost their lives. I had met so many organizational groups who had lost their leaders, team members, and I found that a lot of people were not in touch with their sadness. Instead, they were braving up, and really trying to be stoic and face the world. But you know what? Sadness is the appropriate emotion in such an experience, because we have lost people. So sadness is about really allowing us to see and recognize and acknowledge that there has been a loss, to grieve, and to then see what next. Yeah. Joy as an emotion has a function of allowing us to celebrate the here and now. Something good has happened, something nice has happened. Our job is to experience that joy, to experience that happiness, yeah, rather than just look at what is the next chore to move towards, right? It is appropriate in that moment to celebrate and be grateful and be happy for how it is in the now. Yeah, that's the function of joy. And lastly, fear. The function of fear is to allow us to prepare for the future and what is to come. So when you see students, for example, who have absolutely no fear, right, towards an exam, their effort is also possibly, only in a certain direction and only in a certain approach, because they don't have fear. So that little amount of fear allows us to brace ourselves, prepare ourselves, and do whatever it is that is required for the future. So if you see, each of these functions has a particular story behind it, and it has a particular reason that it exists with us. So now for a moment, I'm going to go back to the story. You can see that in our story, this guy who went home was only expressing anger. Yeah, irritability, upset, screaming, shouting, arguing, being grumpy, grouchy, biting off people when they ask you for something. All of this falls in the bucket of anger. But the question is, was he actually experiencing anger? I think some of you beautifully picked up in the chat and said, no, he was expressing insecurity, helplessness, and fear. Because when we lose a job, and we are a person who runs a home and has lots of responsibilities, yeah, it is fearful when this suddenly happens to us. But you know what? He didn't recognize that. Instead, he spent a lot of energy in anger. It was only towards the end of the day, yeah, that he could come back and talk about his scare and his fear and his helplessness, right? And then you found when he did that, there was a way for him to get support and care and whatever else he needed in his family. And therefore, this brings us now to the first idea that I want to present around emotional triggers, which is the racket feeling. Anger was this person's racket feeling. What is a racket feeling? It is a substitute feeling, yeah, which is right at the top. And this substitute feeling covers the real feeling. So in this case, anger was a substitute feeling, and it was covering his real emotion, which was actually scare, helplessness, fear. What am I going to do? Yeah. So what is the racket feeling basically? Yeah, this feeling that we develop, was encouraged as we grew up. Yeah, somewhere, when we experienced it, people, our environment had a lot of space for it. Yeah, we were allowed. Sometimes we were even given stroked and said, yeah, go for it. Excellent. That's the way to, experience life, or that's the way to experience a situation. We may have also seen that racket feeling a lot in our environment, and we have ended up practicing it a lot. Just like this person had seen a lot of angry in his environment. Yeah, and somewhere every time he expressed anger as he grew up, you remember history shapes our being, right? It was very much tolerated in his environment, while fear and scare was not tolerated. And I remember him telling me that, I was told it's not okay to be scared because I'm a boy, right? This was what he heard so much growing up, right? It was okay for him to be upset, angry, grumbly, etc. It wasn't okay for him to be scared. So somewhere he had practiced so much experiencing anger very quickly. And that is what we call the racket feeling. So in a way, this racket feeling is sitting at the tip of our nose, and it comes up as our very first response to stress and something that is not working for us. And actually, this feeling covers the real feeling underneath. So when you look at these four emotions that we talked about, anger, sadness, joy, and fear, any of them can become a racket feeling, yeah, hiding another feeling underneath it, because each of us grew up in different environments. In some of our environments, anger was disallowed. In some of our environments, fear was disallowed. We all know what has shaped us, and pretty much in our environment, what emotions were actively expressed, had space, easy to manage, and what emotions we rarely saw expressed. What we rarely saw expressed gets suppressed, and that's then bubbling underneath, and we do not even have access to it. You know why? Because we have access to that which we have practiced. Yeah, so this person had developed his anger muscle a lot. And so therefore, anything that went wrong, this irritability, this upset was sitting on top of his nose and would come up very first. It took some digging, yeah, and talking and a few hours to figure actually that I am scared. But the big difference between a racket feeling and a real feeling is that when we understand our real feeling, it almost always helps us to be more authentic in our relationships, to be more authentic in our communication, and most importantly, it helps us problem solve. Even when you saw the story, yeah, this person could go back and talk at home that it is scary. What are we going to do as a family? How do we manage? So when he could arrive and express and begin to think with his family about his fear, about his scare, then they could think together. More minds started working towards a solution, and he could get support. But he did not do any of this when he stayed in his racket feeling. So I think the most significant piece here for you to understand is really that racket feelings all of us have. One of these four will be our racket feeling, and it will be covering another feeling. And what is important to understand is it is our job to ask ourselves, right? What is it that I'm really feeling? Because we need to engage with this question of, hey, what's going on here with me? Yeah, do not make the mistake of thinking that the absolute first feeling that you experience when you're in a situation is really what you are feeling. So walking with this question of what's going on here? Yeah, what am I really experiencing? This is really a useful question because it is directly going to impact your capacity for problem solving, to get the support that you want, and to be unstuck. Yeah. So this, what I've just explained to you, the 4 base feelings with racket and real feelings, is the very first idea that I wanted you to understand around emotional triggers. Yeah. The second idea that I want to introduce here is this. So as you're looking at this, what do you think this is? Anyone put it in the chat, please. What do you think you're looking at? Thank you, Sujata. Thank you, Sujata. You're always very quickly responding. Stamp collection, that's right. Yeah. So all of us may remember even in childhood, having seen such collections, maybe, in your family or friend circle, right? A book where there are a lot of stamps of different countries that are put together, and other kinds of stamps, that people fancy collecting. But you know what? It's not just them who are collectors. We are all collectors. Yeah, we are all collectors. And let me tell you why. Because stamps is another fabulous idea around emotions from the world of TA. So let me tell you another story. This story is about a leader who I coached quite a few years ago. He was not a very senior person, about 10, 15 years experience in a large company. So he was mid-management. And his business were having clients who were visiting them from abroad. And so he and his team and his leader all had put in a lot of effort for that day the clients were spending with them. So clients came, the day began, lots of presentations, lots of interesting and challenging meetings. And, he did his presentation, his team, supported, leader supported. So all of the going-ons of the day finished. And finally, the client had left office and everybody heaved a sigh of relief because, what they had been working on for so many weeks was finally done and they could just, sit down and relax. So he and his boss were sitting down, and this guy happened to ask his boss, so, how was the day for you? How did you think it all went? And, did you like what me and my team put together and, my presentation? And his leader said, yeah, it was nice. I do think some parts could have been, far more efficient and, better done. So, yeah, I think there were some pieces that I would have liked different and sharper. But I think overall it was pretty okay. The moment the leader said this, something shifted for this guy, right? He was uneasy. So he got up from his chair and he was pacing about with his leader and said, I don't understand why you're saying this, because me and my team worked a lot. So the leader said, yeah, I get it. I get it that you worked a lot. And I'm saying it was okay. It's just there are these parts. And then this person completely lost it, right? He was arguing with the leader. He ended up telling his leader, "You are never satisfied with what I do. You have no idea how much me and my team have worked for this. There is no value for what I bring." He began dredging up some 1.5 years of different performance conversations that he'd had with this leader. And this leader was utterly shocked with this kind of response, because it was a full-blown blowout, right? And so he tried calming him and saying, "Hey, you know what? It's okay. Sit down, relax. I never said anything." "What do you mean you never said anything?" Yeah, and the blowout just got escalated and escalated. Finally, after many minutes of this rough talk, the leader just thought it was enough and told him, "You know what? This is not going well. Perhaps we're all tired. Why don't you just go home and we'll talk another time when we are all in a better place?" And so then this person went off. Of course, he was very shaky, because he hadn't imagined that he would speak in such a rough, loud, angry, judging language with his leader. He'd never done that. He never experienced himself in this kind of way. And so, certainly he was not feeling so good. And in our coaching, I really asked him, what actually happened? And he said, "I don't know, I just wanted feedback, but I don't know where I completely lost it. And I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have spoken like that. But you can't imagine, Sai, what happened to me. It was just like a flip. And then I was saying all these things. And, I think I've really damaged my relationship with my leader." And it was really interesting what began to emerge. What emerged was that, some of these words that the leader used in that feedback, which is, "You're not so efficient," or, "This could have been better." He began to recollect in his coaching how these same terminology is what he would hear from his father, who was a very demanding parent. Yeah, where whatever this guy did, even though he was good in his work and his academics, somehow his dad never seemed happy. And interestingly, once again, you can see history shapes our being, and we are all shaped, right? And so in a way, the moment he experienced that criticism, those similar words, possibly in the same tone, we don't know, something got triggered and he became a different person. And this in TA is what we call stamps. So we are all collectors, and we all collect stamps, stamps of different kinds. We collect stamps for anger, for sadness, and, fear. We keep collecting. So for those of you who have remembered when you were growing up, like I grew up in Bombay, and, the Apna Bazaar used to be where Amma would, buy her monthly groceries. And when she would buy her groceries and she bought a certain amount, when we were checking out of the cash counter, they would give her a stamp, and every stamp for 100 rupees spent, you would get 1 stamp. So if Amma spent 200 rupees, she would get 2 stamps. She would bring that stamp and she would stick it in her book at home. So it is those days' version of loyalty program. And so she would keep going to Apna Bazaar, keep sticking these stamps. And then when Amma's book got full, she would happily take me and go off to Apna Bazaar, and she would exchange it for a mixie or, a non-stick pan or some kadai or something, which was, her reward. So now I want to bring it back here to the idea of our stamp collection of our emotions. You know what? We all keep collecting stamps. When we are angry, we don't express it, but we stick a stamp. And somebody else gets us angry, we get upset with them. We don't say anything, but we stick a stamp. So some of us keep sticking stamps in the book. And then a simple innocuous statement, like somebody may make at the table even, which says, "Hey, Sujata, will you pass me the salt?" That's all they need to say. And you will really let them have it. You will let loose, and they will be in utter shock as to what happened. What did I say? I just asked for salt. But you know what? This has nothing to do with what the person said. Your book is full, therefore it has to be cashed. That's it. So when I come back now to the story, you know what? This manager, his book had become full. Yeah, with anger stamps, not just with his boss, over a lot of different people and over many years, his book was getting accumulated. So one small innocuous comment, which wasn't even so critical, it didn't matter because his book became full and he was triggered and experienced tremendous negativity with another person. So a small trigger is enough. Yeah. And the person in front of you may not even have given you any significant trigger. Yeah. But the point is that your stamp collection is full. So what is important here, for us to understand is that it's not great to have a stamp collection unless they are of real stamps. Yeah, emotional stamps we do not need because we end up getting unnecessarily triggered. We have, a reaction to people when it is not needed, and the reaction and the event often have no connection, and it is very disproportionate. So somebody would have said something small, and when you find you overreact to that, please know that you are probably tapping into the energy of your stamp book. And that has to be looked into. Finally, you have to open the book. You have to understand what have you been accumulating and begin to address it, and there are many ways to address it. But I think at the core of this idea is really that we all collect. It is not worthy to be collecting because we just don't know when our book gets full. Yeah, it doesn't give us a warning sign like a petrol tank in our car. Yeah, it just gets full and it gets triggered. So at this moment, what I'm going to ask you to do is just make a note of these questions, because we will go into our breakouts and just talk about what has got provoked for you with these two ideas of racket feelings and of a stamp. What goes on with you? Where do you think are your triggers? What really ticks you off and you find yourself losing it? Which emotion comes easy, it's right at the tip of your nose? Which seems harder to access? And just with these two ideas, what has got provoked? Yeah, so I'm going to stop screen share now. And Anu, I'm just going to ask whoever is putting us into breakouts to allow breakouts for about 8 minutes and maybe 3 people to a breakout. Yeah, just focusing our conversation on these two questions. What has got provoked for me and, around our emotions. 3 people and 8 minutes, Anu.
I think, Pushpa, is Avinash, are you there? Will you be doing this?
Ma'am, I think you should be doing it. 3 or 4. 3. Assign automatically.
You can assign automatically, Pushpa, and I would like to stay in the main room.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, could you go on mute? I think somebody's mic is. Sorry, I didn't follow. If it was Avinash, I couldn't follow you at all.
So you'll see an invitation come in, stay in your breakout rooms till 8 minutes, and then we will bring you back. Yeah.
Sailaja, could you leave the last slide on just in case, people can just take a picture so that they have.
Yeah, sure. Here it is.
I think we have the breakout rooms now.
I'm just going to ask that you keep your questions and bring them back to discuss after the breakout. Yeah. I'm happy to answer all of them.
I think he's assigning us, right? We're still.
Yeah, Avinash, you're assigning or you want support? Yeah, it has come. Yeah.
So we still unassigned. I don't think we have been assigned. Pushpa, are you going to assign or?
I think invitation is there to join.
I think it's happening a little slowly, Pushpa. I think whoever's doing it is doing it slowly. I can see
Must be a bandwidth thing.
going down. Yeah, 3 to 4 people in a group is good enough.
Okay, yeah.
Ma'am, it's an invitation. Anyone can join any room. I have created three rooms.
Yes. I understand. Yes.
We need 3 people in a room, Avinash. So
3 rooms does not work. We need, I'm
10
guessing
rooms.
we need at least 10 rooms or 8 rooms.
Yeah. Okay, chalo. Avinash, I'll do it. Don't worry. I'll just close all the rooms and okay. It's getting closed in 56 seconds. Okay, I'll just recreate. Anu, just give me a minute. I'll create it.
Yeah. Pushpa, you could just do an auto create and then we'll we won't join. Then we can shuffle out to people. That will be okay.
I see people have put things on the chat. I'm looking at it only now. There is a question, but Anu, you can track it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of you got the invitation to join the breakout room. I recreated the room. Not it?
Yes, now we have 23 participants here.
Yeah, okay, I got her.
Yeah.
Got it?
I got the invitation, yes.
Yeah, okay.
We can see people joining the rooms now.
Yes, yeah.
I think room 4, no one's joined as yet. Shweta, Shibanti, and someone with a 1+7. If you could join into the room 4, that would help us get started with this exercise.
I think there's nobody in room 3 also, Anu.
Room 3.
Room 3, Shefali is there.
Yeah,
Shefali and Mike is there. So I think
move her.
Yeah. I'll move Shefali to room 2. Yeah, better, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
then
Sujata
room
is
8,
there.
we'll have the same thing. Pushpa, room 8, you can move them to room 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, room 8, nobody is joined yet. Not joined. It is showing not joined.
Yeah.
Actually, Pushpa, it's okay. Whoever can join will join.
Yeah,
and those who can't, that's fine.
Sure.
They're in this main room, which is fine.
Yeah, sure.
So in the few minutes that we have, it's okay for us in the main room also to talk about our own reflections and what we may want to share. Yeah. And
Exactly.
those who are watching this live streaming, you can take a moment for yourself to reflect on these 2 questions. Yeah, they are very valuable to allow this content to sink into yourself. Yeah, so those reflections are helpful for you. So as the streaming is going on and we wait for people to come back, allow yourself to stay with your own thoughts around these questions. So those who are here in this main room, is there anything that you want to express? What has got triggered for you?
Yeah, Shailaja, one thing which I wanted to reflect with you is that many of the times than our own emotion, it is the emotions of people around us, right? On a day-to-day basis, whether the personal relationship or the work relationship, professional relationship. So I'm not, a person who really, people find it difficult to trigger me. So I'm not the one who gets triggered. So it's usually, but I find it difficult to carry on the emotion of other people when they burst out, right? And I feel like, what was wrong, right? Why are you even, this can be said in a very simple sentence.
Yeah.
Right? Why are you even shouting for that? Yeah. What's wrong? So, and I really feel bad. And many of the times, I know it comes out many of the times by our own, like how you said, we are all being groomed in this society, right? So it comes many of our times, it comes from our own childhood challenges, whatever we have went through, feeling helpless sometimes, and then feeling sometimes being used. And then since I don't react, no, the people take it as my weakness sometimes. So many of the emotions which comes up, right? So how do we even handle emotions of people around us when they react, when they do such things? Yeah,
that's a question that you have, Pushpa. That's what you're saying, right? So I'm just wondering if it's okay with you, can we take this into the queue in the question answers, because then the answer will help many other people to listen to it also. But I'm seeing that your reflection is that other people get triggered and it is an upsetting environment. So how can one learn to manage that, right? That's what I'm hearing you reflect. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anyone else who wants to say what has got provoked for you?
Yeah. So for me, it was a revelation to see, in the first story where we spoke about how we can mask emotions and how the racket feeling comes in. And there were so many incidents that came pouring down. Like specifically for me, I find it very difficult to handle anger. So that's not the first emotion that comes to me at all.
Yes.
And I find it very difficult to comprehend when anger is their first reaction.
Yeah.
So now I can see that it's completely a racket feeling. And it's possible that I'm not offering the right support because, anger is something that triggers something in me and I get totally put off and I don't want to engage.
Yeah. So anger, so that means when you're saying that you cannot access anger, it means anger is probably then the real feeling that is sitting underneath, and there's something else which is the mask. So the question is, what is your racket feeling? Is it typically sadness or is it fear? What is it that you go into first? Because anger is right inside, unaccessible.
So I think that needs a deeper conversation is what I'm thinking.
So that is the useful question that I want to offer you, which is, what is the racket feeling? Because the racket feeling is experience quick. It's sitting right there on my nose. So the moment there's an experience, we go into that. Yeah, the unaccessed feeling is usually the real stuff. The goal for which we have to dig a little in order to arrive there.
So for me, it is always like, let's find a resolution, it will work. And don't get restless. But I'm sure I'm asking something there. Need to figure that out.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, thanks.
Is there anyone else in this main room who may want to contribute and talk about what has got provoked for you? I see some people still in this room, right? There's a Shweta, Gulab,
Shweta,
Nandini who's also here.
Shanti. Yeah.
All right. How many more minutes do we have, Pushpa?
So we'll just close in about 2 minutes, Sailaja.
Can we just give a broadcast message so that we tell people that we're going to bring them back in 2 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Also wanted to just reflecting on the two stories that we discussed, how the importance of having someone like the friend in the first story. Like it's like the person knew what he was going through, but he wasn't sure if the family is the right people to express his fears with initially. It's almost like you're looking for a reassurance from an external source and then bringing it in.
Or one is looking for some understanding for oneself because you are so unaware of actually what you are feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the test here in moving ahead is to be so aware, that you don't need the racket. You go straight to the deep. You do the 6 foot deep dive immediately. Then the problem solving is immediate. You don't spend 8 hours fighting with people. That's the
question around that. I've got a question for you on that, on how can we really jump back?
Yeah, that's really the last slide, which I haven't yet covered.
Yeah, let's do that.
I want to do that when people come back.
I've closed the breakout room. They'll be back in about a few seconds.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Pushpa.
Sai, I would also like to know from you on how, like, if you find some people who are always happy or can, express themselves happily. So what's going on with them? I mean, is it really a deep dive, or like out of the 4 emotions that we've spoken about, all 3 come from are some of the negative emotions, so to say. Not negative, like after you've explained it, but in our social behavior, they are considered negative, except for joy, which is supposed to be the exemplar and the positive one.
Yeah.
So what happens if you find a person who's always...
Is it okay to take that question with the questions?
Yeah, I think it will benefit most people.
Yeah, it's helpful because there's an intriguing answer to that, which I'm happy for everyone to hear.
Sure.
So have most people come back. Let me know when I can...
Yeah. We have 18. I think they're just kind of...
Yes. Okay.
I think room 1, room 2, Pushpa, we sent out the broadcast message.
Yeah. We have sent the broadcast message. Yeah. And I also closed all the breakout rooms.
Okay. So maybe let's carry on. And, people will come back when they have to come back. So I hope those of you who've come back have had some provocations in your breakout room. There is one last slide that I want to share before we go into question and answers. Yeah, just for us to begin to understand how we conclude and use some of these ideas. So I think by now it is clear to us that what we feel first is not necessarily what we are actually feeling, and that we need to do a deep dive to understand the real stuff that is underneath, right? So this is the first understanding. The second piece that we've seen in stamps is to understand that stamp collections are not a good idea. So what is it that we can do to create emotional balance, to create more authenticity, which especially as leaders is very, very significant. The first place to go to is to become more aware. And how do you do that? You do it through observing yourself. You do it through reflecting on your own personal history and asking yourself, what triggers me? Why does it trigger me? Who does this person remind me of? So just reflect and be more aware of your own personal story. The second is begin to arrive at real feelings. If you are unsure about what you're feeling, then stay with it. Don't distract yourself. Talk to a good listener. Yeah, just like the person in our example had a good friend who was a good listener. And through talking that evening, he understood that he may not have been upset, but more he was scared. Yeah, so talking to another good listener is a great idea at arriving at the real stuff. You can journal. Some people seek a coach or a mentor so that they can talk things out and begin to really know what they're feeling. The third piece is learn to express your real feelings. When you have arrived and understood, oh, you know what? It's not as though I'm angry about this. Yeah, I'm actually sad and hurt at what the other person did. So if you're sad and hurt, then that is what you need to express, not be angry. So say to the other person, why is it that you are so sad and hurt, for example, and whatever is your request, do that. Now, when we don't do this and we just stay with the racket feelings and the mask, you will notice that it continues to trigger you for days together, and you will have to spend a lot of time in unrest and dis-ease inside of you. Yeah, so learning to arrive at the real stuff and expressing it is of significance. And the last is learning to create a pause. What is this pause? Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, says between stimulus and response is a space. And in that space lies our choice, right? So triggers are going to be there all around us. Yeah, there are people who will remind us of our past. They will use language, expressions, body language, which puts us off. And all these triggers are showing us that there is something that we need to reflect and think about in terms of why we are being triggered. So between their stimulus and the trigger and your response, learning to slow down and create a pause, increase your response time. It's a good thing. Yeah, there is no great benefit to being somebody who quickly has a repartee to give somebody back, because likely you're shooting off your mouth. Likely you may be expressing the wrong emotion that doesn't suit that time and place. So learning to pause, learning to slow down, observe, these are also very significant. So at this moment, what I'm going to do is, take some questions before I will just look at how we're doing with time. If there is time, I want to do another small little exercise, but let's look at question and answers first. So Anu, do you want to take questions?
Yeah, we could do that maybe. Yeah, we're doing good on time, Sailaja. So
okay,
we need to wind up by 4:30.
Sure.
So I think you've got another 25 minutes.
So let's take the questions now, Anu. There were already questions that I think came up. So let's take it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a question from Shirin Salis, and she asks, do we fall back largely on the same racket feeling based on our stance? Example, the first response is anger for one and fear for another.
Yeah. Yeah, Shirin, we most of the time fall back on the same racket feeling. So in a way, that's like our favorite feeling, right? And so most of us have one favorite feeling, right? So for yes, it is always the same. And of course, it is different for different people. So for example, for a long time, fear was my racket feeling. As I started working towards my own transformation, I found a lot of situations would actually scare me. But actually, in many of those situations, almost always, it wasn't as though I was always scared. Yeah, even if I was hurt, I was feeling scared. Even if I was angry, I was feeling. So that was what got expressed. That was what was at the top of my, tip of my nose. So yeah, it remains largely the same, Shirin. It is really our individual mask, yeah, that we have practiced to wear a lot. Because forever in our growing years, we have practiced it. It comes very, very fast. It's a muscle that is well grown. Yeah.
There's another one like Pushpa.
Yeah.
And she wanted to know, in her case, other people kind of trigger some restlessness in her.
Yeah.
And she may be completely calm in a situation and does not express an emotion. Yes. So how to manage that and what is really going on?
Sure. So I think when we view people, who are triggered, not by us, but something else, and are super expressive in a very inappropriate way, first, it is for us to understand that we don't have to react to them. Yeah, even to that, yeah, we should not be reacting. Two, before we quickly judge them or think in any, not okay way about them, it's maybe useful to know that they are probably at the end of their stamp collection, right? And therefore, it really didn't matter. Your words or anybody else's words hardly mattered. Even if somebody said salt, their book was full and they would have still screamed and behaved in that way. So I think the first is to really suspend our judgment, because now we know what actually is going on with triggers. And I find that our non-reaction is a very good way to bring our mind to the problem solving, because clearly their mind is not working. They're not problem solving. They're only reacting, right? So if we are a leader or somebody significant, then we take charge of the situation, find the problem, move it into the problem solving mode. And then I think if you're a leader, I would really call the person aside and have a conversation, begin to, bring them to the reality of what was said. And the fact that their response was not a response. There is a difference between a response and a reaction. And sometimes that's a teaching learning moment for a leader to begin to show your team member that there is a difference between a response and a reaction. Yeah. And for them to begin to understand what's going on. So I think this is how I would handle, people around me who would be very triggered. I think first is to hold our ground. Yeah. I think that is so important for a leader.
Yeah. Thanks, Sai. That was really, really useful.
Sure.
Our next question is, how does one build one's own resilience to handle the emotion?
I think the first step around building your resilience for emotions is to become aware. Yeah. You know that cartoony slide which I had, which I said, what's going on right now with me? I find we all don't always ask this question. Yeah, we think what we feel is what we feel. And I therefore think the first step is to really make an honest awareness exercise for yourself. Really, is this what I'm feeling, or is there something else beneath that? So I think awareness about self is the first step. Post that, I would say you'll have to build skills around conversations, how to manage relationships. Those are other skills. But I think without awareness, you cannot make this journey at all.
Thanks. So just wanted to, and the next question is, sometimes we are so accustomed to the social behavior and the social patterns that we want to adhere to, that we really don't know what would be the right or the wrong feeling. At the same time, there's hardly any time for a pause, given the sense of urgency we are living in. So how does one really bring about a balance? And what does it take to actually change your behavior or change your first reactions and change your public perception itself?
Thank you, Anu. That's a great question, especially if you're somebody who's leading a team. Public perception, how you're publicly viewed, is so important to be managed. So again, I think my answer goes back to the last piece on my slide, which is learning to have greater response time between the stimulus and your reaction. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, Anu, is when I've finished answering the questions, I'm going to invite the audience into a small little experience, which I call centering. Centering is a mind-body practice that allows our mind and body to learn the pause, right? The more our internal nervous system learns the pause and we practice the pause, even in a crazy situation, we will be able to pause. Yeah, but without practice, it doesn't come to our rescue, right? So it requires that we grow that muscle. Without growing that muscle, it doesn't help us, right? It stays weak. So maybe in a few minutes, let's do centering together and just begin to notice what happens for us. Yeah, but basically, awareness, observation, pause, that is really the answer to your question, Anu.
Sure. Thanks. We have questions pouring in.
Okay.
The next one is, or maybe I'll take the other one first because it's correlated to the previous one we spoke. Can you give us an example of how pausing has successfully changed a behavior?
Oh, yeah, my God. I have a huge list. You know why? Because I have teenagers in my home. So when my children became teenagers, now one of them is 22, but the other one is still going to be 17. When my kids became teenagers, I became a breathing expert because anything they said, I told myself, just breathe. Yeah, just zip up and breathe. Yeah, because if I hadn't done that, I would have been climbing the wall, or they would have been doing it, either parties would have lost all hair. But despite that, you can see how gray I am. So that's the value of the pause. Yeah, that you have learned to, not add fuel to the fire. You have learned to calm the nerves in the environment so that we can do what is important, not do what is coming up for us. Yeah, whatever comes up for us is not necessarily the right thing or the important thing. So I think the pause really saves the day, right? Gives our neurological system, our nervous system, a space to think and feel and figure out what is the next move. Yeah, I'm not going too much into the brain piece of this, but there is a sympathetic nervous system, there is a parasympathetic nervous system, there is huge science around centering, right? And when we center and when we pause, our parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, which allows our system, which is in an agitated place, to calm, and therefore our mind becomes clear. So there's great science behind it for those of you who want to read and learn more. But in short, I think it just saves your day, and allows you to be more useful and effective rather than being reactionary.
Given your calming nature and beautiful glowing looks, I think there is a value in the pause. I'm looking forward to listening to that.
Sure.
Meanwhile, our next question from Rashmi Das Gupta is, how do we respond to a person or a close family who likes to trigger reaction by repetitive behavior?
Rashmi, repetitive behaviors can come from two places. One, it can come from people who have a problem. There are certain like ailments and neurological problems where people also develop repetitive behavior, and it may look to us like bad behavior, but it's not always. Yeah. So that's one kind of repetitive behavior which needs an understanding of their condition. But if it is not that, Rashmi, then typically when it's repetitive behavior, it is because they are interested in escalating it and hooking your emotions, because they are unable to get the reaction that they want. Therefore, the repetitive behavior comes, right? It's really like a fishing hook. Yeah, let's see who picks it up, right? And then I can engage in a good fight, which makes my day in some sense. And there are some of us who are in that kind of mood. I think the most significant thing, again, Rashmi, is to know how to not react to it, right? And to be able to instead ask them, is there something that you want? Because I noticed that we're doing this, or you said this 4 times, or you look a little, upset in the 4 times that you said it. Is there something that you require, either from me or elsewhere? So do not ignore them. I think engage with them with a question, and importantly, know that their interest is to escalate it. Right. And so if you do not participate in it, it cannot escalate. I think this is this is at the core of what I want to say to you.
So our next question is, by pausing, if we get a feeling of showing myself as weak, what do I do?
This is really, this is a myth. Yeah, that we think that, pausing is about weakness. Not at all. Yeah, after your pause, and you take a few moments even to consider what has happened, and then what comes out of your mouth is a problem-solving solution or a move or a statement or whatever, then everybody can see that you're not weak, right? Because you're doing what is effective. So pausing, not getting triggered is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of great strength. And if you are a leader of leading a team, Vinita, then I think it is a sign of immense dignity. Yeah, that you can be like that and conduct yourself like that. Yeah, so I really think as leaders, all leaders who are on this call, yeah, it is important that we conduct ourselves with dignity, because our teams are watching us. They are learning from us, right? Culture is being built through us. So I do think that pausing, taking your time, even saying aloud that, I just want to consider this and think through it, or, so much has happened, I just want a moment. These are all useful phrases to use, is not a sign of weakness at all.
Sailaja, then would you say that both men and women have, do they have similar emotional experiences? And is it social stereotypes that we need to look at? How does one address that?
Yeah.
And a question in correlation is, are they because women go through menopause and pregnancy and all that, is there a genuine chemical change that one is going through in the emotional process?
Sure. I'll answer the second question first. Yes, hormonal changes, chemical changes, neurological problems are all deeply connected with our reactions, for emotions. So it's definitely something to be considered. Definitely something to think about before we conclude anything about a person, to look at life stage and what they're going through. But the first part of the question was, are there stereotypes? I think men and women, all of us have a racket feeling and a real feeling. Yeah, all of us have. However, it's interesting that in the way men are socialized, a lot of times, and we've seen it especially in our culture, how men are constantly told, don't be scared, you can't show your vulnerability, you can't be fearful, you're the strong person, you're the provider, right? It is okay for them to be angry, but it is not okay for them to say, this is terrible, I'm scared, Similarly, if you look at a lot of times, our women are socialized, to not express anger. It is looked down on if you have a loudness and a great clarity to your anger and you express it. So a lot of women, if you notice, when they're angry, they will end up crying. They will end up tearing up. So I do think that this is connected with, socializing, because when we're angry, right? We're not sad. We cry if we are sad. So if you're meant to be angry, why are we crying? Yeah, it begins to impact what we're able to say to the other when we are crying versus being able to say to the other that I didn't like what happened, right? And please do not do this again because this is how I experienced it. This is well-meaning anger expressed well and drawing a boundary. Instead, if you are like a sad sack and you're just crying and staying all emotional, then of course it's not problem solving, right? They don't know what's going on. They're thinking that you're feeling bad about something. You're not just feeling bad, you're angry. And there's a difference between anger and hurt. They're two different things, right? So I do think there is an element of socializing, but having said that, I know enough men and women who have these other patterns also. So I wouldn't generalize it, but I think by and large, it is fair to say that we do see these patterns.
Sure. Thanks. We live with so many unconscious biases, and this really helps peel them off layer by layer.
Sure.
So I think we're done with most of the questions which have come in. I have just one last question to ask you.
Yeah.
Which, out of the 4 buckets that we spoke about, 3 of them seem to be in the negative space, at least socially. And one seems to be the one, joy, so to say, seems to be a positive emotion. Yeah. I've also come across people who always seem to be joyous. So is there the same thing happening, or is there something?
Yeah, great question. So I said all 4 can be racket. Yeah, and I meant that, which means even joy can be a racket. Yeah, a great example is this American actor, Robin Williams. Yeah, always cheerful person, and we know what was lurking underneath. So some of us who have received personal messages in our family of upbringing, which is it's always important to stay positive, be joyful, be the sunshine, be the person who's uplifting an environment. We can learn to constantly have joy, irrespective of what is going on inside of us. Yeah, and that often leads to depression, for example, and other kinds of manifestations. So yes, joy can also be a racket. I'm not saying all joy is a racket. There are some people, especially those on a spiritual journey, you find them able to be happy for a long time. That's very different from people who may not have had any journey, but are all the time smiling. They will even say difficult things with a smile on their face. And that's a bit awkward, because difficult things are not meant to be said with a smile on our face. That's not authentic expression, right? So yes, joy can also be a racket. All right, so
we can move on to...
If there is no questions, then let's do centering together. Yeah, it's just going to take us 5 or 6 minutes, and then, we can just wrap up. So I'm just going to ask all of you to get into a comfortable posture in your chair, get your feet flat on the ground, close your eyes. And just allow yourself to watch your breath, breathing in and breathing out, just your natural breath. Breath going in, breath going out. Feeling the ground beneath your feet. Just allowing yourself to become aware of your posture. And now bring your attention to the sounds that your ears are picking up, including my voice. Maybe there's a fan or any other sound around you. Just become aware of the sounds. Bring your attention to smells and tastes in your mouth. And just bring your attention now to your body. And notice if any part of your body at this moment is sort of tight, is sort of contracted. The muscles are a little tight. Just notice. Many of us roam the whole day because our body is triggered and we don't realize it. Our body is a wonderful place to give us cues of what is going on for us. It responds first, much before the mind. So notice your body, and wherever you see tightness in your neck, in your shoulders, in your stomach, just take a few deep breaths. Almost imagining that your breath is going into those muscles and just allowing them to relax. Scan your whole body and allow yourself to drop your shoulders. Relax your muscles and breathe easy. Now bring your attention to your mind and just notice the thoughts. They're streaming in and leaving, one thought after the other, like guests. They come and they go. Thoughts about all kinds of things. You don't need to do anything, just observe them. And observe, what are these thoughts about? You know, what topic are they about? Just notice, that's all. Now bring your attention to anything that you may be feeling in this moment. And just see if you can name that feeling. Once again, go back to the external sounds, smells, the feel of air on your skin. These are all sensorial from the external. Become aware. And now we go back to the internal, checking our body, doing a scan, breathing into our muscles, making contact with our mind. Once again, watching what are their thoughts now. Are they different from before? Just noticing. Take a deep breath. Again, becoming aware of your emotions. And just noticing how your breath has slowed down, how your breathing is slowed down. Allow yourself to breathe from your belly. And just continue to keep toggling between the external, around you, and the internal. Outside, inside. It's really like developing an antenna that is sensing externally and internally. And just notice how your body is feeling, even just in these 5 minutes that we have spent in quiet, observing ourselves. Continue to notice your mind, noticing any feeling, noticing your body. And now, feeling the ground beneath your feet once again, becoming aware of the chair that you're sitting on, slowly opening your eyes. And I just want to say that what you did now is what we call centering. And I only did a 5-minute version. There is a slightly longer version that you will find on my website. Yeah, it's a free downloadable. Feel free to go and download it. And my recommendation is to use it at least once or twice a day. Because what you're doing by centering is growing the muscle of the pause, right? Growing the muscle that does not allow you to get triggered, you know, how much ever triggers are there in your environment. And overall, if you notice, we keep toggling external, internal, watching ourselves keenly. That's what builds the muscle of awareness. So those of you who feel like you want to download it, that's available on the website. And of course, those of you who would love to get in touch with me, I'm on LinkedIn, and please let me know if you make contact that you attended this session, so I know who you are and I can sort of take in your request and be in touch with you. So we are really at the end of where, this evening, and I'm just going to ask before you leave, just put into the chat what has been valuable for you. So Pushpa, Anu, Nandini, and the team knows that their effort counts, right? They They take time and effort to put things together. And I'm always appreciative of such teams who do these things outside of their work. So please do put it to the chat, because that's good feedback for them. And of course, for me. And yeah, once again, thank you for having me. And I've enjoyed your questions and being with you. And happy to stay in touch and connected with any of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sailaja, for such a lovely session. I definitely have benefited from the pause. And I think what a dignified way for all the leaders and all the, like both in our personal lives as well, to appreciate that and use it as a tool to be centered. And I hope we all are able to overcome the racket feeling and deep dive.
Yes.
Also, as we were doing the centering exercise, I also realized that it would be far more easier to express the real feeling and articulate those words after the pause than an immediate impulsive outburst.
Yes.
Much needed in today's day and age. So thanks so much for a lovely session. I'd like to call it Nandini for her for a small vote of thanks and a reflection on what she gathered from here. Thanks.
Thank you, Anu. Love the centering act. What I gathered, it all starts with self-awareness. Who am I? Do I know when I am who? How do I deal with this me in this journey called life? Honestly, if you ask me, I was on a reflective trip. This was an experience with a call to action to step up to the need of being emotionally well by taking charge in understanding emotional triggers. There's little selves in us which has all been shaped with respect to our relationships, feelings, and emotions. It's all in noticing those moments, labeling those emotions, and managing them to respond constructively. And it's okay to be sensitive and emotional, as it allows you to manage stress better and be emotionally well. So don't lose touch with your emotions. Allow them to surface, don't suppress. The art of creating a pause between stimulus and trigger to response is undoubtedly a great way that has enabled me to manage emotions and respond constructively. Our gratitude and a big round of applause for our guest expert speaker, Sailaja. Thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule to be with us to interact and share the critical learnings around understanding emotional triggers. We thank our channel partner, Garvagudi IVF Center, who have always stood by us, and our audience for giving us your valuable time. A big shout out to the entire team of our Health and Wellness Pillar for bringing this all together. Ivan Karnataka Secretariat and Julin for always being there. And my constant partner in progress, Anupama Venugopal, the Vice Chair of Ivan Karnataka, for being around always, every time. It's Friday evening, signing off for today, and stay tuned for our upcoming efforts. Wishing everyone a restful and safe weekend ahead. Bye.